Rain clouds hung low over the city that afternoon, but the real storm was already happening outside Mercy General Hospital. On the edge of the parking lot stood a little girl, only 6 years old, shaking in her sky-blue dress, dirt-streaked. Her cheeks, tears, mixed with rain, and her tiny voice kept cracking as she tried to speak, but her words were swallowed by traffic noise, and by the cruel laughter of 3 men blocking the hospital gate. Her trembling hand pointed toward the glass doors, where her mother, pale, weak, barely upright, was being kept from entering. When the girl finally managed to speak, her voice sliced through the air like a desperate plea from another world. "They won't let my mommy in. If you believe kindness can still change the world, if you believe good hearts still rise when darkness closes in, then take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Pure Hub Kindness. Because what happened next will remind you why we must never stop believing in humanity." The little girl's name was Sophie Turner, just 6 years old, far too young to understand cruelty, yet old enough to recognize fear. Her mother, Laura, had been pushing herself for months, working double shifts at a diner just to afford the medication she desperately needed. A brutal infection had drained her strength and left her gasping for breath, and that morning, Laura finally collapsed. Sophie did what any child with a brave heart would do. She grabbed her mother's hand, pulled her outside, and begged the world for help. But fate chose the wrong moment. The main hospital entrance was under construction, leaving only one temporary gate open, a gate controlled by 3 contractors who treated Laura not like a patient but like an inconvenience. They blocked the doors with their arms, smirking as if her pain was entertainment. One tall, hoodie, cigarette dangling from his lip, shooed Sophie away like she was a stray cat. Another actually filmed the scene on his phone, laughing under his breath. The third, heavyset in a red flannel shirt, muttered that people like her could wait their turn. Meanwhile, Laura's breathing grew heavier, her knees buckled, and she slid down the glass door, clutching her stomach as Sophie cried for help. But the bystanders passing by just looked away, and then a sound rolled across the street like distant thunder. Motorcycles, 5 of them. The thugs paused, glancing over, but didn't care, not until the riders slowed, parked, and swung their boots onto the pavement. The engines clicked as they cooled, and then everything went quiet. Leading the pack was a man built from iron and storms, Ryder Callan, late 40s. A face carved by wind and years on the road, gray streaking his beard, arms sleeved with tattoos that carried stories of pain, loyalty, and loss. His black vest bore only 2 patches, Hell's Angels and RL Chals. Ryder's eyes scanned the scene, the crying child, the dying mother, the 3 men blocking the door. He knelt so he was eye to eye with Sophie. Her reflection trembled in his mirrored sunglasses. "Please," she whispered, "they won't let my mommy in." Ryder rose slowly, quiet.com, but dangerous as a storm behind his eyes gathered. He handed his gloves to one of his bikers and began walking toward the gate. The rest followed behind him, spreading out like a dark tide. The thugs straightened up, suddenly unsure. Ryder stopped inches from them. One word, barely a growl. "Move." The man in the hoodie tried to look tough, but one glance from Ryder's cold eyes made whatever courage he had drained from his face. Behind Ryder, a giant biker named Mace leaned against a motorcycle, his silent presence louder than any threat. Another biker folded his arms, waiting, watching, and just like that, the thugs stepped aside. Ryder didn't waste a second. He walked to Laura, lifted her gently, and wrapped her arm around his shoulder. "She's going in," he said. The doors slid open. Doctors rushed forward. Nurses grabbed a stretcher. Sophie held tightly to her mother's hand until Laura disappeared behind the emergency room curtains. Outside, the bikers remained like guardians, silent, unshakable, unbothered by the stares of staff and bystanders. When Ryder finally stepped outside again, Sophie ran into his arms, sobbing in relief. He pushed a strand of hair from her face and said, "You're braver than most grown men I've met." Before he left, he slipped a folded $20 bill into her small hand. Across it, written in simple pen, "For Mom's medicine." The bikes roared back to life. People inside the hospital watched through the windows, not because of the leather, not because of the tattoos or the engines, but because they'd witnessed something pure. 5 men who the world often judged, chose compassion instead, and in doing so, they saved a life. Later that evening, when Laura finally opened her eyes, Sophie clutched the note to her chest like treasure. "Who helped us?" Laura whispered. Sophie smiled softly. "Angels, Mommy, Hell's Angels." If this story moved your heart, if you still believe kindness can come from the places you least expect, please like, share, and subscribe to Pure Hub Kindness, where real stories of compassion remind us what humanity still means. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were there that day? Because sometimes, one act of courage is all it takes to change someone's forever.